Let me ask you about Mickey Joseph. So I got this feeling. I think other people have too. I know Gary and I talked a little bit about it. Did you see this hire as a little bit deeper than just somebody coming in and being like an assistant? I mean, because I see this as a future potential
Scott Frost
replacement for
replacement.
Frost.
Yeah, I do it hands down. I mean, you and I've talked before about it. I wasn't a fan of the Frost hire. Period. I mean, he's here. I didn't think he should have been fired this year, simply because I mean, who are you going to get at this point? But I think you nailed it. I think this is the guy that they're saying, hey, if things go haywire, this is a guy internally that we can turn to, um, and see what
Is
he
it
can do.
is
He's, I
it a
mean,
good is
he's
it a good
tenured.
fit?
Yeah. I mean, obviously he can recruit. I mean, I think I heard this, and I can't confirm this, but I think he was one of the top 20 recruiters in the country at one point. LSU. I mean, that speaks volumes for a guy that can go into a house of a kid and bring him to LSU. It's a lot easier to recruit LSU than it is Nebraska. So
Why isn't he?
I guess
Why,
we'll see.
why isn't he a head coach already somewhere? If he's
Who,
so great,
right? Who knows? I mean, he's still a relatively young dude. I mean, I think he's 46 years old, 47. So
He should just
yeah,
be a little bit older than Frost. He was there right before, or a little.
yeah.
He was there before Frazier, and then Frost came in after Frazier. But
He
I
might be
mean,
50.
the
I'm
other
not sure, to
thing,
be honest.
yeah, the other thing too. He was here like in what 89 to
90.
91, something like
Yeah.
that. So, um, every time I hear his name, and I think of that game against Oklahoma where they
Oh,
hit him out of bounds and he sliced his calf open,
yeah.
and then Grant had to. Anyways,
Adam,
the other thing
he's
too is
53. Is his age? 53.
if they're worried about, say, Trev Alberts and them are worried about if they do, especially like a mid-season, we get off to a bad start and 5-6 weeks in they decide to shit Cam Frost. You kind of get in front of the you get in front of the backlash from the fan base, because you have your ex-Nebraska guy, you have a guy that's won a championship at a coaching level, you have a guy that can recruit. You know what I mean? So it's not like
He checks a lot
you
of
don't.
boxes.
He checks a lot of boxes, and you don't create so much chaos mid-season or even right at the end of the season if things aren't working out and they go to get rid of Frost.
So, you brought up something I want to touch on real quick. About a month ago, I was at a Big Red dinner, and Alberts was the speaker, and he said on there, somebody said, "Oh, Frost has got 1 year," and Alberts goes, "I have never said that. I never said Frost has 1 year." Um, and he's right. I kind of went back. We all kind of assumed that Frost has got 1 year to get this right, but um, I mean, I'm not saying that he's got two or three. I mean, no one knows. I think that's between him and Alberts, but I don't.
Well, I think that's up to his output.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, so let's say next year. I mean, my God, he's won 3 games the past couple of years. Let's say he wins 6 games, he doubled his wins. I mean, is that good enough to keep him around? Maybe. I mean, did it
Probably.
probably?
But I'm not saying he has 1 year either, but I am saying
There's a
I'm
lot of
of
people that
full
do. They think
belief.
he's got 1 year.
I agree. But if he comes out, if they come out and look anything next year like they did this year, he's limiting himself to that year. I don't think he can have a repeat of this past year and survive it, is what I'm saying. As far
I'm
as the 1 year thing goes, if he comes out and there's improvement, we start winning games. Especially games we should win. We win a couple of the close ones, or it just
Oh shit!
looks
I mean, every one of
different.
those was a close game. I mean,
Yeah,
win half of them.
yeah, yeah. I agree with all that, and I definitely agree that there's no question. So, like, one of the last times we talked, and every time you and I have talked about coaching changes, my first thing to you is always like, okay, and get who, right? I don't look at coaching changes the same way as like a relationship. Like, this isn't working, we got to break up, and then I'll work on me and I'll find somebody else to do it. You have to replace a coach with a coach. So when teams or fan bases are like, this guy sucks, let's get rid of him, it's like, okay, but then get who? What are you going to do to better your situation and not prolong or worsen it? That question's answered now having him there,
Well,
right?
you're right. You're right. I mean, I also one of the things that is we react to losses and say this guy's got to go. We got to get him out of here. He sucks. in the AD world, as I kind of had a couple conversations um, privately with some different ADs, they know what's going on behind the scenes. Notre Dame came out and said, when Kelly left, that they understood that they knew that was coming. Oklahoma said they were caught off guard. Yeah, those ADs talk. They know who's going to be leaving well before it goes public. I think a lot of that stuff is ironed out with the agents. And if you're a good AD, you're having those conversations. You know that there's going to be potentially a lot of movement. I think Trev knew that. The buyout was way too big. I think there's a lot of variables there, and I think they know that well before they make that move public, whether or not there's guys that are interested in the job. You can always, what do they say? They put the feelers out to agents to see what's going on. So I agree. I mean, who's out there? Who's willing to come here? This would have been a horrible year for Nebraska to fire Frost to go and fight that mess of coaches and all the changes that's going on. So, you're right. I mean, who were we going to get?
Unless you knew you could get Mickey Joseph. But
right.
The counter to that, like if I wanted to argue against that, is like, okay, you've got a guy that nobody knew of until they were talking about bringing in new guys, right? I mean, granted, we knew. I mean, but I'm saying like overall in general.
Oh, right.
Like people didn't know who this guy was. To Gabe's point, why wasn't he up for other head coaching candidates? What style of offense are you getting if you get Mickey Joseph? We don't know. You know what I mean? He's coached under other offensive coordinators. So I mean, it's not a given. Like there was so much put into Frost's stock when he got hired that they threw the bag at him and they left it to where do what you want assistant wise. Like we're hiring you, you're the man, your system, everything from what you've done building up to here. And then 4 years later, Alberts and them, in my opinion, came up and went like, all right, dude, your shit ain't working. So we're going to take some of your money. It's going to go towards these assistants. You're going to clean house. You're going to get some help. You're not able to just do this all yourself. This isn't little UCF, right? You're in the Big Ten. You're in big boy football now. And doing the same thing every year is fine if you're progressively getting better, but you're not. So they took more of a hands-on approach over his program, his system, whatever he was doing. And but they hired him to do what he was doing. If you're hiring Mickey Joseph as a potential head coach replacement, what are you hiring him for? To recruit his ass off? How well is he going to develop outside of?
Yeah, that's the only thing right? Is he can coach up.
Run?
Yeah, he can coach up receivers. He can recruit. So you're hiring a guy, if that's the thought, to replace Frost down the line. There's so many questions. And again, I go back to, and I know we've fallen on some really shitty times, but this isn't the place for a first-year coach to come in and cut his teeth, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. We're going to see what Mickey Joseph is. You know what I mean? We're going to find out.
That's a good point, and that's also, if we could be wrong. Like I'm just saying, I feel we all feel. I'm not. You guys usually are, but no. But if let's say we're right, and that is the intent of like, okay, we've got our next head coaching spot or in place if need be. Well, now you're replacing a first time, and he's not a first time head coach. Frost isn't, but at this level, head coaching. Now you're doing that with Mickey. Now you're replacing that with another.
Right, I agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
So maybe he's not. Maybe he's not set up to be the replacement. Maybe it's like we'll reevaluate it, whether it's 6 weeks into this year or 2 years from now, if need be.
There's clearly something there because, all we heard is, we're going to hire offensive coordinator and then we're going to fit the pieces in on what that offensive coordinator wants to run. Well, then we come out of nowhere and it's like, oh, well, Mickey Joseph. Now, I'm not saying you don't go get the guy. If you have the chance to get him, you get this guy.
Only because Frost tried getting him a year and a half, 2 years ago.
But I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer. But that also clearly tells me that Frost is still going to have a heavy hand in the offense.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be to his detriment, to be perfectly honest. But now switching systems. I mean, who knows? I don't know, man. I mean, the jury's going to be out. I really have no clue on what this is going to look like. I mean, looking at the numbers from Pickett, the kid from Pitt, I mean, he threw it, he attempted almost 500 passes for 4,300 yards. And
Yeah, we
You know,
attempted what 300.
he attempted, completed 334, attempted almost 500, 67%, 42 touchdowns, 7 picks, but he was
And
sacked 29 times.
I think Nebraska attempted in the 300s for passes last
Oh
year.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
so that's one of the things I'm worried about, or not, whatever, just kicking around is like Mickey Joseph's gotten these receivers and developed these receivers to be NFL receivers. That's in a pro style type of offense, not guys that are
Yeah.
pinning back and blocking for option and toss plays a lot. So if Frost is still going to try and run it, what I'm like Gabe and I were talking earlier, tight end and wide receiver, in my opinion, have been the best recruited positions at Nebraska for however long. We keep getting these guys, whether it's Spielman, Stanley Morgan,
Fedoni,
Toure this year, what's his name that went to Kentucky, Robinson, all these guys,
yeah,
like they leave
Orville.
because, in my opinion, they don't have anybody throwing the ball and they're not in a system that lets them shine as a receiver. So are we going to get more of that? Are we going to get better receivers than we had that get pissed off and leave because they're expected to block